The Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as the ADA, recognizes that some people may want to keep their disability private when applying for a job or in the workplace once they have a job. However, the ADA also requires people with disabilities to provide information about their disability when seeking assistance in the workplace, which is known as a reasonable accommodation. This video will provide you with information so that you can make the best choice about revealing your disability.
If you need a reasonable accommodation and your disability is not obvious, your employer is allowed to confirm that you have a disability, such as getting a note from your doctor.
Your employer is also allowed to get information about your need for the reasonable accommodation. Some employers may ask you to sign a general release to get all of your medical or mental health records. This is more than your employer is allowed to get under the ADA, and you should not sign a document like that.
If you do provide information about your disability to your employer for a reasonable accommodation, the ADA requires your employer to keep this information private. The employer is required to keep all disability-related information in a file that is separate from your personnel file. Only those people who have a need to know about your accommodation, such as your supervisor, should be able to see your disability information. Your coworkers are not allowed to have this information.
Now, some courts have said that confidentiality rules do not apply if you voluntarily share information about your disability at work. So, if you want your employer to keep your disability private, you should only share information about your disability as part of the reasonable accommodation process.
Whether you disclose your disability at work is a decision only you can make. You are not required to do so unless you need a reasonable accommodation to help you do your job. If you do decide to tell your employer about your disability to get a reasonable accommodation, the ADA requires that your employer keep this information confidential.